202-4YOU or BaptistJax.com. The Florida Forum Speaker Series benefiting Wolfson Children's Hospital welcomes chef, restaurateur, and humanitarian Jose Andres March 31st. A 2 Michelin-starred chef and twice named to Time's 100 Most Influential People. Tickets and information available at thefloridaforum.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning and welcome to First Coast Connect. I'm Ann Schindler. Today, from spiking gas prices to a volatile Dow, we discuss what makes the most sense in turbulent financial times. Then, training teachers to support students with disabilities. We talk about a new coaching and mentoring program in Duval County Public Schools. And mind games. 2 local students share a board game to help kids and adults discuss mental health. Join the conversation. Give us a call on air at 904-549-2937 or head to firstcoastconnect.org where you can find all the ways to connect with us. Stick around. We'll be back right after the news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Iran says it is fake news that talks are underway with the United States. NPR's Aya Batrawi reports instead, Iran says it has received a request to open negotiations.
President Trump says constructive conversations are underway between the U.S. and Iran. And he says he held off on the U.S. bombing Iran's power plants to give these conversations more time. But Iran disputes this, and its foreign ministry says there have been no talks with the U.S. since the start of the war and no change in Iran's position on the Strait of Hormuz. They did, however, say there are efforts by countries in the region to reduce tensions. Trump says he wants Iran to stop all nuclear enrichment and its missile program degraded. Iran has long rejected these terms and says it wants compensation now for the war. Iran and the U.S. were in the midst of nuclear talks last month when the U.S. and Israel launched war, killing Iran's supreme leader in Tehran. Aya Batrawi, NPR News, Dubai.
The Senate has confirmed Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullen to be the next Homeland Security Secretary. He'll take over an agency partially shut down. Democrats won't support funding until they agree on changes to how ICE agents operate. Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy says he has a plan to fund DHS.
The idea that Senator Cruz and I came up with was a 2-step process. First, we accept the Democrats' offer to open everything but ICE, and then step 2, we open ICE ourselves. With a reconciliation bill.
But yesterday, President Trump told Republicans to reject any negotiations with Democrats. He wants them to focus on an elections bill first, and he says he won't sign anything until he gets that. The elections bill is not likely to pass the Senate. The New York Times and other media report President Trump cast a mail ballot for a special local election today in Florida. He did that previously in 2020, but Trump continues to bash mail ballots as cheating. This comes as the U.S. Supreme Court heard a case from Mississippi yesterday involving certain mail ballots. A current law allows some mail-in ballots to be counted after Election Day. NPR's Ashley Lopez explains.
14 states plus D.C. and some U.S. territories count mail-in ballots that are received after Election Day, as long as they're postmarked on time. The Republican National Committee argues this is an illegal practice because Congress set an election day. They argued that means that all voting and receipt of ballots end that day. However, Mississippi officials argued voters submitting their ballot in the mail by Election Day complies with federal statute, even ballots that aren't received by officials until after Election Day. Members of the court's conservative majority appeared to be skeptical of this argument, though 2 of the 6 were tougher to read. Liberal members of the court suggested, however, that it is up to Congress to set rules on how states run elections. Ashley Lopez, NPR News.
On Wall Street, Dow futures are down 240 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. St. Augustine's elected leaders are advancing a measure to make last year's changes to its annual holiday event, Nights of Lights, permanent. In an effort to ease residents' pain when it comes to gridlock traffic, the City Commission agreed last year to make the event run for 8 weeks. shortening it by around a week. As a result, some business owners said they saw decreased revenues due to that change, but Mayor Nancy Sykes-Klein says making the change permanent splits the difference between some residents' calls to shorten it by even more days and some business owners who want the event to last longer.
Residents are giving up. They've been giving up. The businesses last year gave up a little bit. So sadly, that's kind of the way compromise works. We all give up a little bit so that we can get some kind of balance and peace.
Before the change goes into effect for the next holiday season's event, the City Commission will have to vote on it once more. If they approve the measure on its second reading, the 2026-27 Nights of Lights event will kick off the weekend before Thanksgiving and run through Martin Luther King Jr. Day in 2027. It'll be a windy day today here in Northeast Florida, as a wind advisory is in place for Duval and Nassau counties' coastlines until 8 this evening. We could see wind gusts up to 45 miles per hour there. Slightly calmer winds are expected inland. We do have the chance for some rain this afternoon with highs in the lower 60s for most of the area.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Doris Duke Foundation, which aims to support the well-being of people and the planet for a more creative, equitable, and sustainable future, and listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Welcome to First Coast Connect. I'm Ann Schindler. Today, from tariffs to inflation to 401k roller coasters, current financial realities can seem overwhelming. But one factor flying under the radar is debt. We talked to two experts about strategies for financial resilience in uncertain times. Later, a local training program helps educators reach and teach kids with disabilities, and local students create mind games for mental health. But first, when we booked this segment, the Dow was crashing. Yesterday, it surged more than 1,000 points. Its best day in 6 weeks. It's just one sign of a volatile economy that has sown confusion and anxiety for many. Here to help talk us through it, we are joined by Jonathan Hanson, Senior Vice President of Marketing Strategy and Member Engagement at VyStar Credit Union. Jonathan, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
We're also joined by Titus Pittman, Managing Partner and Certified Financial Planner with Genesis Financial Planners. Good morning, Titus.
Good morning.
So, Titus, start us off with just how to absorb what is happening right now. What kind of financial headwinds are we facing generally as citizens and as individuals?
Sure. Good morning once again. I would like to say that we take a deep breath because the market doesn't like uncertainty. And of course, from day to day with what's going on in Iran, it seems to be a lot of uncertainty where we're having trade talks or not having trade talks, peace talks, not having peace talks. So the market doesn't like uncertainty. So because of that, you have this constant volatility. We heard some good news that there may be some negotiation, which actually that was important for the market because it really allows us to see that the conflict may be coming to an end. So from a roller coaster ride, we're going to still see that, but just keep in mind that this is a point in time. Over time, these conflicts will get resolved. The market will come with some kind of certainty, and we can move forward in the right direction.
How do you rank the relative and varied challenges of the economy today, if we're talking about things like gas prices or energy prices generally, tariffs, the stock market, and the disruption in that market?
You know, this may sound strange, but it's actually relatively been holding up pretty strong. I remember when I started my career back in 2001, we had the Iraq War, Afghanistan War. The market went down very hard. From a net perspective, it may seem like a lot, but we're only really down about 5 to 6% overall in the market. That's letting you know that the market is really strong and resilient. And we came into 2026 having a good economy, but there are some fluctuation there. So I would say that it's really held up pretty strong compared to other recent events we've had in the past.
So, Jonathan, you at VyStar recently did a regional study that looked at basically financial stability of this area, and you focused on three major cities in that area, Atlanta and Orlando and Jacksonville. So tell us, first of all, just writ large, what the picture is for the Southeast as relative to the rest of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in partnership with TransUnion and the United Way and others, we did this study, as you mentioned, to really look at what are the financial pressures and stressors that are facing the communities that we serve. And the results were eye-opening. So, bottom line, the across the board, 40% or the majority of respondents stated that finances were the top stressor that they were facing. So, I'm a father of two. I can list quite a few stressors myself. So, the fact that that came up to the top was pretty prevalent. In addition to that, I think the majority of people were saying that they weren't able to pay their bills on time. So they're struggling to be able to pay those bills on time, and they're spending more than they make on a monthly basis. So there's an obvious need out there in the community. To validate some of the findings that we saw as well, we also polled some community partners. So we looked at over 200 community partners that we have relationships with, and we asked them, what are you seeing? And what they saw was a little bit more than 86% of the residents or the populations that they serve are also managing more debt than they can handle. So I think there's definitely a significant need out there to address the mounting debt that the community is facing.
And in terms of stressors, it's worth underlining. I mean, you're talking about this being the top stressor. This is more than medical issues, family concerns, work pressures. I think a lot of us feel, pressures in our interactions on social media or around politics, but this is the number one concern. So you're looking again regionally. Is there anything about the way that the Southeast population lives or experiences the economy that is measurably different than other parts of the country?
Yeah, I think just, in general, cost of living, for instance, might be, lower in Jacksonville than Atlanta or Orlando. But one thing we found in general was there's a real need for education. So people, for instance, thought, and this was pretty interesting, that, that the amount of debt that they had was manageable when maybe it wasn't. So, for instance, they had significant debt that was exceeding the amount of income that they could pay, that they could cover with their income on a monthly basis. And they thought that was normal to be able to, use your credit card for everyday purchases like groceries and then make the minimum monthly payment. But what they're not really understanding is longer term, how is that going to affect your credit score? And then, if that impacts your credit score, then that also is going to impact, the prices that you pay on a monthly basis because of the higher interest rates on your auto loan.
How does it impact your credit score? I think that there's a period in which people are told, well, you need to get credit cards, you have to establish credit. But then if you use them, it can be punitive. What is the difference between revolving debt that you don't pay off monthly versus debt that you do when it comes to something like your credit score?
Yeah, so there would be fixed debt, and then so that would be something like an auto loan or a mortgage payment that's, tied to a fixed loan, and then there's unsecured debt, which is revolving like a credit card. So the good thing about the credit card is it gives a lot of people that liquidity or that extra cash flow for pay for things that they might need. But the issue with that is if you're using that unsecured debt as almost a fixed loan. So if I'm, using that on everyday purchases and my balance is racking up and up and up, and I'm only making that minimum payment, well, the minimum payment you're making, the majority of that is going to interest. So if you have a, lower credit score, that means you're going to probably be paying higher interest, which is going to take you, what that means is it's going to take you longer and longer to pay off that original credit card balance. And it's going to get to a point where basically you're going to max out your credit card, which is what we're seeing a lot in the market where, people are what we call credit line constrained, where they don't have that extra liquidity to spend on discretionary needs. And they're really struggling just to, use the money that they have to pay for everyday expenses.
If you're just joining us, we are talking about financial challenges in an uncertain economy. If you're experiencing some or you have a question about a financial matter, you can join our conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org where you can find all the ways to connect with us via social. Titus, I want to circle back a little bit to the stock market because very often that's used as a metric for how we should judge the economy. But there's a big chunk of the population and the world that is not invested in the stock market and for whom it doesn't represent anything specific to their personal economy. So why do we look to that? And is that a fair barometer of the economy? Is it something that we should be looking at as a meaningful indicator of where the lives of ordinary Americans, for instance, depend?
Sure. I would say that it is a mechanism to use and put it in context. Even though most people, when they hear about the stock market, a lot of them, they just think, hey, outside of my work, most of us who are working have 401ks at work. That's a part of the stock market. But sometimes, often, people don't view that as investing in the stock market. I also would say that those that are retired, they don't see it as much as a tool to recognize what they're feeling economically at home because they're not invested anymore. They're living off these incomes and stuff. So I would say that it's a mechanism that we can use to judge the economy. And why economists look at the stock market as that, because these are American companies, these are international companies. So as the companies are doing well, the consumers are doing well. So that's why they use it as a gauge to see how the economy is overall doing.
Is that true when companies are doing well, Americans are doing well? I mean, is that a fact?
It's not always a fact, but what happens, the consumer is actually buying these products and services. So as they look at how much a company's is making for profits, let them know how much the consumer is actually spending. So oftentimes, even though the economy is down, it's because the consumer has pulled back and contracted their spending. So it is a gauge, no matter they're in the stock market or not. These are companies that are producing these goods and services for the consumer.
For people who are invested in the stock market, there tends to be this jubilation when you see 1,000-point gain, as we did yesterday, although it kind of settled back down after that height. And a lot of anxiety when the Dow crashes, which happened essentially, in 48 hours preceding yesterday. So how do you think people who are invested, for instance, in a 401k at work, how should they be absorbing those shocks? How should they be reacting in real time?
Well, I would say that we shouldn't overreact. Investing is a long-term process, 1, 2, 3+ years as you look at an investment versus a saving, which is normally less than 12 months. So I would say if you have a great plan, a diversified portfolio, I wouldn't do anything differently at this point, especially if you are an accumulator. These are times to buy same quality investments at a cheaper price. So that means you're buying more shares using the same amount of money. So this is an opportunity for you to actually get ahead when the market actually fluctuates up or down. I would say, so continue your long-term plan. Make sure you're highly diversified, owning multiple companies. Make sure you do have some cash on the sideline for emergencies as well. And this will allow you to ride out these volatile times that we see. But over time, and the data has shown us that normally the volatility will subside and there will be a higher stock market once the uncertainty has been removed.
Jonathan, when it comes to inflation, I mean, we've been talking about debt, but it has a real impact when prices are going up for people who are already experiencing debt or perhaps are right on the edge of that. Once prices go up, it takes a really long time for them to go back down. We're seeing a big increase in gas prices. They might be a little more mobile than some inflationary prices. But tell us how that impacts your clients and people who are living on the financial edge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. You can't really control how much a carton of milk costs, for instance. You can't, control the price of eggs, but you can control your own finances. So that's what we always stress is, let's focus on what you can control. And that's really what the study showed us is that there's a real need for education and educating people on how to best manage their finances so that, when these inflationary pressures happen, that they're not as affected. So, for instance, we implemented our VyStars recently, our debt payoff challenge to address this very issue. And it provides, members with calculators as well as tools and resources to look at things like, if I have equity in my home, which, home prices have risen over the past few years, then I can use some of that equity, which people may not even know, to consolidate some of my higher rate credit card debt. And that payment on a, home equity line of credit or a, cash out refinance is going to be a lot lower using the equity in your home than a monthly payment on your credit card. So that's an easy way right there to really just look at, the tools and resources that you have available to impact your finances to kind of insulate yourself from some of these more inflationary pressures. And that's all about education. I think, we know what we know. If your parents built a pool or consolidated debt using a personal loan, then you're probably going to do the same thing, but that may not be the right choice for you. So we really encourage people to participate in things like these debt payoff challenge, which gives you these tools and resources to help people address some of these specific concerns for them.
And you had a really strong response, I know, to this debt Payoff Challenge. It was launched the end of January, essentially, and I believe you had 20,000 people sign up just the first week. So where are you at now? And give us a time frame as to when it ends. If it is, I suppose, maybe too late for people to enter?
No, so this goes on through the end of April. We have a little over 31,000 participants across all of our markets, Atlanta, Jacksonville, Orlando. You can go to vystarcu.org/debt payoff to look at how to join. And the great thing about it is as soon as you join, you're going to get a financial quiz, and it's going to ask you specific questions about your specific financial situation. So let's say you're struggling with debt or you're struggling with savings. It will serve you up specific tools and resources based on your specific needs. And again, it's all about tying back to education. And, we're going to give you these online modules, tools, resources. We do free seminars locally here in Jacksonville at our Financial Fitness Center at the corner at Deb Store in Springfield, as well as an online community that we started that has a little over 3,000 participants currently in this Facebook group that we created who are sharing best practices and have some great stories about their personal debt journey. So there's a lot of resources out there to really address this specific need.
It seems like there are forms of debt that perhaps we don't even recognize as debt. And I'm thinking particularly of the buy now, pay later option for online purchases. I feel like it's almost the first option that you get now before they ask for a credit card. They're almost running everybody through their paces. Do you want to try to just have this for a fraction? But that is, in a sense, it is kind of a loan that you're taking. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the issue with these payday lenders and the buy now, pay laters is you're paying significantly higher interest than you would if you knew about, specific financial products that we offer or that others offer that could really help you make those same purchases at a fraction of the cost.
What kind of numbers are you thinking of?
So, for instance, some payday lenders, let's say I'm throwing out a number, they'll charge you, upwards of 20, 30%, let's say, for a loan, knowing that you need access to cash. So they're giving you the access to the cash, and they often have lower underwriting criteria to allow more and more people to access that cash. However, you can probably qualify for, a lower rate credit card or a secured credit card that's going to help you build credit, not really affect your credit score, and help you draw from your savings. Or you can use the equity in your home, like I mentioned, or even refinance some of your higher rate loans, like your auto loans that you have elsewhere, to help you free up cash and use just cash versus a loan to make some of these purchases.
How about young people? I feel like the buy now, pay later option is very appealing to, all people that have a limited income and fewer resources, but kids in particular. If you're looking to buy clothes, you can get an item that you wouldn't be able to afford with just a very little amount of money up front. What is that teaching kids? How does that train them perhaps in areas that are not helpful in the long term?
Oh, absolutely. I think, bottom line, it goes down to, you know what you know. And I think that comes from your family, friends, and your own personal experiences. So we really encourage youth. We have a lot of different programs to educate youth on how to manage their finances responsibly. But an easy way to do that is to open a checking account and have a youth checking account that we offer for under 18 years old, as young as 6 years old, actually, where you can have a parent deposit money into that account, that checking account. It's not a credit card. It's a cash control checking account, and help them, learn how to log into online banking, balance their account, making sure they're not overspending. There's also low limit credit cards if you're in those college years. So if you have a $1,500 credit card limit or $1,000 credit card limit, let's say, and you max out your credit line, it's not going to be the end of the world. So having those lower limit lines gives you that little bit of the financial education and the feeling of what it's like to have that, revolving debt in a safe way that we can help you manage at a much lower interest rate than a buy now, pay later.
Titus, when you're talking to people who are considering investing or figuring out how to plan for their future, how do you bridge the gap between people who are in a state of financial crisis or right on the edge? We know that a lot of people, you often hear, one paycheck away from homelessness or one medical emergency away from being, deeply in debt. How do you encourage people to think about long-term investing when they're dealing with short-term demands?
Sure. The first is handling the first problem. We start everything with a budget. So we try to get them on a budget and save up that emergency savings. We normally advocate 3 to 6 months worth of savings before we even talk about investing. Most people want to start investing right away, but if you have not taken care of the things up front first, having the emergency savings, having that cash flow to allow you to do that, we normally put that on pause before that part is taken care of. Once that's done, then we encourage them and show them a way systematically over time how to invest. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. So we put a plan together for them that allowed them, whether it's on a monthly basis, quarterly, semi-annual basis, for them to put money away and start saving and making an investment. Because an investment is something that goes on more than 12 months, right? So if you have only 12 months to invest the money, that's not an investment. That's a savings. So we try to really educate them about savings versus investing.
And so what if they approach you and they have debt?
Sure.
If they have credit card debt, if they have just gotten themselves into maybe multiple credit card, what do you tell them at the outset if they're coming to you with existing debt?
Yes. So we allow them to put together a budget. We ask them to pull their credit report, and we try to work with them to make sure ways that they can actually start paying down that debt. What we use is called the snowball effect. Because you have multiple debts, you're paying the minimum on everything. We said, listen, pay the minimum on all the bills except one. The extra money you have, let's put that toward one bill. Let's get that one paid off. Now you take that money in addition to what you've been paying instead of the next bill. So we have a waterfall effect to get them on track to try to pay down the debt versus trying to just add a little money to each one of these debts that you currently have.
Do you encourage people to hold off on long-term investing until they've paid off their debt?
We do, because what usually happens if the debt has not been taken care of, once we start investing the money, even though the plan has been for it to be long-term, normally situations happen. We have to actually liquidate that investment. And that's what you don't want to do on a short-term basis, because the market does fluctuate up or down. So we would never want to be in a situation for a client where the market has fluctuated down and we're having to sell these investments at a loss.
I want to return, Jonathan, to the regional study that you did, because I found some of the information in there really interesting. One conversation that it raises is the Southeast and how it's changed after years of being really attractive for being affordable, how that has kind of made the Southeast a victim of its own success. And the report talks a lot about how there's been this massive migration that existed even pre-pandemic, exacerbated by the pandemic, that has drawn people largely from, the North and the Midwest, and has changed permanently the financial dynamic for people living here. I'm sure there's a lot of people that have, felt that pressure, but talk about how that is experienced, whether it's through rents or job or cost of living.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. As you mentioned, a lot of people from that Northeast area came down, during the pandemic or shortly after the pandemic. I think about my neighbors, and 1 in 5 are from somewhere in the northeastern states. And that certainly, I think, drove up home costs first and foremost, because they're used to paying, cash for their homes, because, maybe they sold their homes for considerably more than, the homes cost here. So that, had an immediate impact of driving up home costs. I think rent. So when we look at our study, the costs of rents have continuously increased. They haven't yet really stabilized. So I think about what I paid back in the day in college versus what, people pay now. It's significantly higher, and it hasn't really gone down. And then cost of living as well. So that cost of living is nationally, we're seeing that. But if you couple that with the increase in rent and one of the things the study showed is that housing expenses in general were some of the top expenses that people are spending their money on. So if that is the one thing regionally that we have seen increase the most, that I think tells, some of the biggest story around why people are experiencing so much in our market specifically.
And these costs have really outpaced wage growth in this area. One of the things the study noted was that during the pandemic and the rise of remote work, you had a lot of people move here that are coming with salaries that far exceed the standard here, because they're bringing salaries with them from large markets or places where the cost of living is much, much higher. So they are coming here with essentially paychecks that dwarf what local people might make.
Oh, absolutely. So I think if you're able to spend a little bit more on, groceries than somebody else, or you have a little bit more discretionary income, than somebody else, or you're able to spend a little bit more on your house or pay cash and not take out a loan, that's going to have definitely going to have a trickle down effect on, the rest of us who lived here. But I think that's why, again, we always emphasize, looking at what you can control. So I think if you can control reducing the debt, building the emergency savings, as mentioned, and really, look at what you have and making sure that you're a little bit more insulated from some of these other inflationary pressures that you can't control, that's always going to put you in a better situation. So we encourage people to really, educate themselves. If that's coming to our website, you can do that as well. And, look at calculators, look at the loans that you have. And if you were using these calculators to refinance an auto loan, for instance, that could save you $30, $40 a month. That refinancing your debt or consolidating that using the home equity loan, that could save you hundreds a month. All of that adds up to, thousands of dollars a year that is ultimately going to help you in reaching your goals and establishing that monthly savings.
Refinancing, though, is also something you have to be careful about, right? That you're not coming back with higher interest rates, that you're not exceeding the benefit that you're going to get in closing costs. And those are complicated things for a lot of people, especially if they need cash now. If somebody, you're saying, well, don't go to a payday lender, try one of these more traditional outlets. But there's still a lot of factors that people have to consider if they just need, say, a new roof on their house, or if they need an HVAC system. What do you tell people about balancing that need for money now versus some of these trade-offs in the long term?
Absolutely. Well, what we would always say is that, everyone's situation is different, and we 100% recognize that. So we would always start with coming to us or coming to someone who has a better grasp and deals with this every day. So we have over 80 branches across all of our markets now. They do this every day. They work with people one-on-one to say, what is your specific situation? How can we best serve your specific need? Because you're right, it's never a one-size-fit-all where, refinancing your auto loan is going to save you if you're extending that term and now you're deeper into debt than you were before. But there might be better solutions that you're not aware of because you have equity in your home, for instance, that you could use that they could really help you uncover.
Yeah. I want to ask about people who are not in traditional jobs with a 401k, Titus. And I'm thinking of people who are working in the gig economy, people who are artists, people who may work in the service industry. These are a large cohort, really, of our population. And I think there's a lot of people here locally with a lot of questions about how they should be preparing for retirement eventually, or at least stepping back to some extent from the labor that they do. How do you encourage people who are not in a place that's offering a workplace 401k to approach this longer term financial planning?
Yes, so I would definitely say there still is a place for you to invest, whether you're a sole proprietor, entrepreneur, or with a job that doesn't offer 401ks, pensions, etc. There are ways for whether or not you open up an individual retirement account, a Roth IRA or an IRA, an individual savings account. If you're investing more than the cap limits for those particular accounts, there are ways to do that. And I would say start with getting with a financial professional, put a plan together, see what your budget looks like and what your cash flow looks like so you can begin to start making those investments.
We're talking about financial challenges and how to brace and prepare for them. We have a call from Ryan in San Marco. Good morning, Ryan. Go ahead.
Good morning. I was just wondering, as a local bankruptcy attorney, if the debt consolidation panelist has that as an option at the end of the inquiry that the people fill out. And I ask because I have a lot of people that come to me 6 months, a year, or more after attempting consolidation, where they're getting sued because the low-hanging fruit, small accounts are taken care of by the debt consolidators, and the larger ones are ignored, and ultimately they get sued, and the consolidators say, oh, sorry, can't help you anymore, because they've made their 6 to 18 months worth of money off the people, and the people are significantly behind where they would have been had they just called a bankruptcy attorney at the beginning.
That's a very interesting question. Jonathan, I'll turn to you on that first, since we're talking debt. So first of all, I'm interested by what he says, that the debt consolidation sort of focuses on the low-hanging fruit. Are debt consolidators profiting off of this and then leaving people with the major debt unresolved and then becoming a liability?
Yeah, I think absolutely there are organizations out there that do exactly that, exactly what he's mentioning there. We are not that, so we're a local credit union, not for profit. So we focus more on talking to individuals one on one, understanding their specific financial situation, and then educating them on products and services that we help that we think we can help them reach their goals.
If people aren't specifically reaching out to VyStar, how do you help them discern what should they be looking for to find a credible debt consolidation assistant as opposed to somebody that might be scamming them?
I would recommend always just starting with someone you trust. So whether that's your existing financial institution, whoever that is, going to them and explaining, your specific situation. You'd be surprised if you have a checking account somewhere, just that one product, but you're having all these other financial pressures, or you're racking up debt on credit cards you have elsewhere. You'd be very surprised by just contacting them what they might be able to do to offer support and resources and educate you. That the other thing would be to educate yourself. So there's a lot of resources out there in the community that you can look up, or online resources that you can look up to Google the credibility of some of these organizations as well, because they can definitely help you consolidate your debt, but they're not looking at your holistic financial picture, your personal situation.
And at what point do you advise people to think about going to a bankruptcy attorney, like our caller Ryan suggested?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I'm certainly not a bankruptcy attorney expert, but I would say it's always to start with who you know, and whether that be a financial planner or someone at your local bank or credit union, and then going from there, and following their specific advice on where to go.
I just want to ask, kind of as a final question for you, Titus, what you're seeing in terms of this new form of, it's not investing, but it really is sort of online gaming or gambling. I think a lot of people are looking in a very short-term sense. There's a lot of people putting money into prediction markets, things like that. How do you address people who are starting to use those, believing that that is a strategy for building wealth?
Fortunately, it's not a population that we service. However, we share with people from an education perspective that investing takes time and it's a process. There's a lot of things that seem very exciting, but it's not usually for your benefit. We do like the fact that people are more engaged now than ever before, thinking about investing, thinking about taking ownership, because a lot of companies don't offer pensions. A lot of companies are even doing away with 401k plans. So we like that aspect of them. So we try to really educate people that it's not a W money overnight. It's not gambling. Investing is investing, right? You put $1 away, you give it time to grow, and over time, you hope to get some returns off of it. So it's really about educating the client to what's really out there. If it sounds too good to be true, usually it's not true. So that's how we educate the client.
Well, we do have a link to the VyStar Debt Challenge on our website. Jonathan Hanson from VyStar, thank you for being here. Titus Pittman, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, helping teachers help kids. We'll tell you about a local program training educators to serve students with disabilities. Welcome back. Decades of efforts to mainstream kids with disabilities is a success story. Roughly 2/3 of students spend most of their school day in general education classrooms. But that doesn't mean teachers are prepared to meet their needs. Here to tell us about a teacher training program that aims to help is David Hoppy. He's professor of special education at UNF and director of the school's doctoral program in educational leadership. David, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
We're also joined by Chantel Minton-Jones. She's an exceptional student education specialist here in Duval County. Good morning, Chantel.
Good morning.
And we're also joined by Latasha Friesen. She's a third grade teacher at Andrew Robinson Elementary. Latasha, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, David, you recently wrote an op-ed for the Florida Times-Union about this. What is the challenge as you see it?
The major challenge for general education teachers is they have not been prepared to effectively meet the needs of students with disabilities in their classrooms. And over time, with the passage of IDEA 50 years ago, we have tried to include students with disabilities. What we are learning from the teachers who come out of the teacher preparation programs plus the alternative certification programs is that they do not feel prepared to meet the needs of these students. So this grant that we have through the federal government is trying to tackle that problem and provide them with the strategies and resources they need to be successfully teach the students with disabilities in those classrooms.
Latasha, we mentioned that you're a third grade teacher, but you have also taught first and fourth
grade.
Yeah, so you've got a lot of experience teaching young people. How does this play out in your classroom? What are some of the challenges that you've encountered and when it comes to trying to teach a class that is really diverse in terms of its needs and expectations?
Yeah, so over having 20 years experience in the classroom, I've come in contact with students on all ranges. And so trying to meet the needs of each individual student is a challenge. And so this program actually helps me as a teacher to give me those tools and strategies to use to meet the needs of all of the students, especially those with disabilities.
And what kinds of disabilities are you tasked with handling? Are we talking about students who can't hear? Are they students with behavioral issues? Give us a little sense as to what you've come across in your years in the classroom.
Yeah, so it's a variety. Students with behavioral issues, students with learning disabilities. It's a wide range of students.
And have you found that when those students are entering your classroom that you're given much in the way of preparation or an understanding of what they're coming to the classroom with? Or do they just sort of show up on day one and you call their name along with all the other students and then it's just figure it out?
Yeah, so basically they show up on day one. You have to maneuver and figure out how am I going to tackle this student and what are their individual needs. So the students may have an IEP where they, will receive accommodations for testing and different activities, but it doesn't really give you the strategies that you need to actually make sure those students are successful.
Mm-hmm. Chantel Minton-Jones, you are overseeing this project here in Duval County, that helps train students in that kind of circumstance. So what do you hear from teachers about how that impacts them in the classroom when they're trying to all of a sudden devise strategies to deal with this range of potential disabilities that students have without training to help?
So they are tasked with just figuring it out. Quite often that comes with frustration, naturally so, because you don't have, what you need in terms of strategies or a roadmap for how to best meet the needs of your most diverse students in your classroom. And so through Duval IDEAS in coaching, I actually had the pleasure of coaching Latasha last year. I was her coach. And so we are coaching these teachers and teaching them and training them on the high leverage practices for inclusive classrooms, showing them strategies and ways that they can make their classroom most inclusive for their students with disabilities. And by, default, because it's good teaching, it's good for all of their students in the classroom.
And so describe to us what a strategy might look like and whether, you say it's good for all students in the classroom. So I imagine you're not teaching them specifically how to manage a child who might be hard of hearing. You're teaching them a strategy that works overall for a variety of circumstances and students. Can you give us an example?
So an example that comes to mind, and I'm just remembering Latasha, a student that we talked about in particular. She had a fellow who was very frustrated didn't understand how to regulate his emotions, and I think he toppled a desk. And so one of those high leverage practices that we talked about, particularly high leverage practice number 9, is teaching social skills. So then that would, in working with Latasha, talk to her and teach her through, what can we, show this student? Is he recognizing when he's feeling frustrated? Does he know how to advocate for himself? Does he know when to ask for a break? Does he know what that looks like? Does he need to take a walk? And just so, working with her to work with the student to teach, this is what I need. If I feel this way, this is what I need to do. This is what this looks like for me.
David Hoppy, this program is addressing a need for training. It also provides some a stipend for the teachers who participate.
Yes.
But this is just one pressure that teachers are experiencing. And I imagine that when when teachers are coming to this program, that they're sort of running the gamut of emotions in terms of all of the various pressures that they're facing in a classroom. So how do you sort of help keep focused on this one goal when there's so many other things going on in the classroom every day that teachers have to contend with?
Well, I think one thing that Duval IDEAS really helps us do is think about how different things are connected in schools. Accountability efforts that teachers feel all the pressure for because it's tied to their bonuses. Students with disabilities matter there. So how do we, in Duval IDEAS, talk to the teachers and make it practical? And that's what Chantel and her team does, to look at all the needs that they're seeing in the 3-day workshop that they do over the summer that prepares them to go back into the classroom in the next academic year to meet those needs. But they also are talking about what are the pressures with those teachers. And that's where the coaching is really important. This ongoing embedded coaching, it's not just sit and get professional learning. It is that the teachers who are involved in this and recognize the power of that with the coaches can help navigate ongoing issues that happen in their classrooms and deal with the pressures that they feel from outside. I think the whole accountability effort, the pressure on teachers, the attack on the teaching profession that is coming from across the country is really problematic. But at the same time, this program is trying to help teachers be resilient and figure out how to do that. And what we do know from research is that we need veteran teachers. We need teachers who have the skills and strategies to help our most needy kids, but also the advanced students, also the middle of the road kids that really need to come out with an education because they're our future.
Latasha, what did it mean to have that in-classroom support as opposed to, as he says, just a 3-day seminar, but kind of have that ongoing in-classroom advocate and trainer?
For me, the coaching cycle was very helpful. Being able to actually watch myself and do some type of self-reflection also. The way the cycle works is that you teach your lesson, you'll record yourself, and then your coach will watch your 10-minute lesson and then give feedback. So that was very important for me, even as a 20-year teacher, a veteran teacher, having that the coaching cycle helped because it made me realize, okay, I didn't realize I did that. Or next time when I'm teaching this student, let's try this strategy. So it kind of gave me some of the self-reflection that a lot of teachers need.
And Chantel, we have a link on our website to the program, but who would you encourage to at least look into it or think about applying for this next cohort?
So thank you so much for that. We are actually actively recruiting for cohort 3. So it is for general education, kindergarten through 5th grade classroom teachers. They must be a teacher in Duval County Public Schools. So unfortunately, it's not open to private or charter school teachers at this time, but general education, classroom teachers, K through 5. I think they have to just from 1 year to like Tasha's 20 years to 25 years. I think I had a teacher that I was coaching who had been teaching for 32 years. There's something for everyone because of the diverse needs of the students that we're getting every day. They don't get, we don't always necessarily get to prepare for them. She may walk into her classroom and have a new student tomorrow that has an IEP, giving them those practical strategies that they can use. And as many teachers our cohorts can be as large as 240 teachers. So we are looking for any and everyone K through 5 elementary classroom teachers.
All
Please
right.
sign up.
Well, it's a great program. Thanks for coming on to talk about it. David Hoppy, Chantel Minton-Jones, Latasha Friesen, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, Mind Games. We preview a student-created board game designed to help kids and adults discuss mental health.
Alchemy Yoga and Wellness, opening this summer in Ortega, offers a balanced approach to movement and recovery. Services include yoga, infrared sauna, cold plunge, massage, and facials in one location. More information at alchemyjacks.yoga. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Accidents can happen when you least expect it. For decades, our attorneys have dug out the facts to help juries decide who's at fault.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
What if your gift to WJCT News 89.9 could do twice the good? During our spring radio drive, it can. I'm Michelle Coram, WJCT News 89.9, and thanks to the Henry Landworth Family Advised Fund Match, every dollar you give right now is doubled. Your support immediately goes twice as far to power trusted local journalism and community storytelling. This is a powerful moment to invest in the future of public media in Northeast Florida. When you give today, you're helping strengthen local reporting, support meaningful community conversations, and ensure independent journalism thrives. Together, we are building the future of trusted local news. Make your matched gift now at wjct.org/radio.
By some counts, the U.S. housing stock is short at least 3 million homes. Houses, apartments, townhouses that we haven't built over the past few decades. Prices have soared, especially since the pandemic. Now, there's a new push in Congress that could make building new homes easier. But will it be enough? The federal government's role in fixing the housing crisis. Next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. A student-led mental health summit this weekend is designed to open corridors of conversation between kids and adults. And part of that is a new board game that gives players a perspective shift. Here to tell us about it, I'm joined by Joshua Smiley, senior at Ed White High School and member of the I'm a Star Foundation. Joshua, nice to have you here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on this show, ma'am.
Well, it's my pleasure. So you have created a game that is called Perspective Switch. Tell us a little bit about the game, how it works, but also why you wanted to create it.
Yes, ma'am. So me and my colleague, specifically, her name is Jamie Edwards, had designed the game. And to first answer that question, she designed this game to allow for not only parents, but also children to get a perspective of each other, because we have seen that mental health affects everybody, specifically young people. And because of that, we wanted a way for adults to get our perspective with their children, because one of the big factors and why mental health specifically in young people goes unseen is because not only do parents not have that conversation, but being from a whole different generation, they don't really understand. So not only was this game used to give a perspective of what kids may go through, but also just an activity for parents and kids to learn.
Those are difficult conversations. So in creating this game, what were some of the tools that you were using to try to make those conversations easier, or just a way to even bring up certain difficult subjects? How does it work?
Yes, ma'am. So how it works is that it's a board game, and there are cards, and before you even pick a card, you pick a character. So as a young person, instead of being another young person, you're going to have the perspective of an adult. And as an adult, you're not going to have or pick a card with an adult. You're going to pick a child, because the whole operation of the game is to learn about each other and how an adult feels and how a child feels in that same situation. So because of that, switching an adult to a child and a child to an adult, it allows those two to build upon a conversation where the child entered the perspective of a parent, and they not only get to learn more about what a parent may go through, but also they get to hear how a parent hears the situation as a child.
And so are you bringing up specific challenges then in the game, or certain circumstances or situations that a child might encounter in order to discuss those in the context of the game? Are you addressing kind of specific circumstances, or is it more general?
I would say more general, because even though a big portion of the game is focused around mental health, the main reason that me and my colleagues designed this game was to give those interactions, those conversations, to start building upon new ideas and plans, to be like, hey, now that I have learned this information, how can I take this information and use it in my regular day activities?
Yeah. And so what are some of the challenges that you see among your peers that perhaps would benefit, that they would benefit from having a conversation with an adult to sort of talk about some of those issues?
Yes, ma'am. So our mental health summit, actually, we have specific topics that we feel that not only children but parents go through. So for example, academic burnout, regular burnout, stress and anxiety, and social media pressure.
Yeah, and there is definitely a lot of social media pressure. And so this is an annual summit, as we mentioned. Who do you invite to come to it? Who is it open to? And who do you think is best suited for it?
Well, this event, just like all our other events, is for everybody. We want everybody to come out, because anybody can learn. Learning never stops. And because of that, we want to give everybody an opportunity to learn new things, but not also learn new things about themselves, because mental health affects everybody, no matter if you're from the age of 0 to 100. Mental health affects everybody. And because of that, we want to give people this opportunity to not only build upon new coping strategies, but also build upon ways that they may be able to help somebody that is dealing with mental health.
And mental health obviously is a big component of just overall health, and that's been a focus of the I'm a Star Foundation previously. You actually created an app that helps people focus on healthy eating, healthy habits. Tell us about what's new with the app.
So our Empower Me app was designed by our coding group, and the Empower Me app was main focus when created was, again, to combat children obesity and obesity in America. But going through and adding more components to the app, we've seen how beneficial it has been. And because of that, we want to continue updating the app. We want to continue adding more components. And a big component that we just added was, again, our cookbook, a way for not only teens, but also adults to have these new eating strategies, and not only new eating strategies, but also certain fruits and vegetables that may be healthy for you, how you can build upon a new eating habit just by learning.
Yeah. Well, the youth-led mental health summit is Saturday, March 28th. It's from 10 to 2 at UF Health Jacksonville in the Science Building. Joshua Smiley, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me on, ma'am.
All right, and that's our program. Thank you for listening. Join us tomorrow when we highlight a rare photo essay of Black Jacksonville in the 1930s. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Generation W celebrates its 15th anniversary themed Generation W Impact on Friday, March 27th. It's their largest annual convening of civic, business, and community leaders featuring dynamic speakers and workshops to enrich your life. Tickets available at genwnow.com.